And greetings, Kerbal Killers. Welcome back to Intimate's Guide to Customizing KSP, where I show you exactly how to change things in KSP. Let's go ahead and get rid of this window. It annoys the living daylights out of me. So, first of all, welcome to Shirty that's in chat. And who else have we got in? And the list isn't populating. Oh god, Twitch, really? Oh well, whoever else is in there with us, greetings. Can't actually see at the moment. New followers, we have Not So Cool Guy 11. Wonderful, always love my new followers. Right after the scream? Well, could be. Right after the stream, I will follow him back. Presumably him. So, was going to try and do an unscheduled stream over the weekend. Unfortunately, that just didn't happen. Twitch was doing some really weird things. Kinda didn't really have the time, so just didn't quite pan out, I'm afraid. But, oh well. So, what are we going to do this time for intermediates? Well, we've seen various structures within KSP's config, and they all look pretty much the same. So let's go ahead and build on that a little bit more and cover one area that some people do like to go into, would probably love to go into, and that is the saved games. For this one, I'm actually going to go into our KSP Advanced, simply because it actually has a pretty decently complicated saved game. So, inside your KSP will be a folder called Saves. Go into it. And these, ignoring the scenarios and training, these two, in our case, will be the saved games that you have. If you have more than two, then there'll be more. And of course, conversely, if you have less, there'll be less. So we're going to open up one of them, and this just has persistent in it. The SFS is just basically the saved game. It's the file extension that KSP has given it. You may also have a quick save.sfs. Obviously, persistent is what is automatically saved at regular intervals in KSP. The quick save is the one when you press F5. So, the SFS files are again just text files. You can open them up in any text editor that you wish. However, I prefer to use Notepad++, so that's what I'm going to use. So, let's have a quick look at chat. It's Curly Kerbal in chat. Greetings, Curly Kerbal. So, straight away you can see pretty much the same sort of syntax, except this one is using squiggly brackets, not square brackets. Why on earth they have things differently between different configs, not entirely sure. But let's crack on. I'm sure square brackets are used somewhere for something. So as always, game, then we have open brackets. First thing is the versioning on the saved game. This is quite important. When KSP updates, especially with some of the older versions around 20, 21, 22, something like that, the updates used to break the saved games. So what some people did on the forums was basically provide a little script, a little piece of software that allowed people to run it on their saved games to upgrade them so that they were compatible with the newer version, instead of basically losing their saved game and where they were up to. So basically the program itself automatically changes that when you upgrade to a newer version. Title, well, that's basically what you see on the screen when you load the save game. Save goes for description. Link URL and caption, no idea. I've never seen them populated at all, and can't see anything in KSP itself for the saved game. So I guess that's something that they're in the process of implementing. Mode. Now this one's quite key. As you can see here, it says mode sandbox. You've also got mode career and whatever the other one is for the really weird one. Now status 1, scene 5 are basically to do with KSP's own sort of internal views, basically, for the user interface. So if you're gonna do any editing, I suggest leaving them alone. Flag. Well, you can change the flag within KSP, or you can do it within the same saved game, and that's the path for the squad. I can see how I'm going to have trouble speaking tonight. That's the path for the flag. In this case, it's within game data, squad, flags, and it's called default. Launch ID, not entirely sure. I think it's to do with the number of launches. So my advice, leave that exactly where it is. Parameters. Now this is to do with the game itself, difficulty settings, etc. You can turn certain things on and off. So for example, in flight, are you allowed to quick save? Are you allowed to quick load? Is the autosave enabled? Are you allowed to use the map? Switching vessels. Whoops, that would be bad. Thank God for undo. Can you time warp? Can you EVA? Can you IVA? Can you board, restart, so on and so forth? Most of these configs are pretty much self-explanatory. Same goes in the editor. Can you save? Can you load? Can you start anew? Can you launch? So on and so forth. Probably want to just leave them all exactly as they are. Certain things from the editor can you leave to the main menu. That's set up as false. I don't believe they have a facility or button within the editor to allow you to go straight back to the main menu. So I wouldn't recommend setting that to true, unless you wanted to balk your saved game. But if you set it to true and something bad does happen, you can always set it back to false again. So going down, you've got settings for tracking stations, space center, your difficulty. Those people that really hate the KSC blowing up might want to set that to true. But then again, what fun would that be? Career mode. Well, this is actually sandbox, so... But you can, of course, change that. So in the scenario itself, you've got various other parameters. basically to do with your progress, etc. These are all automatically updated when you launch craft, so these give you your records and whatnot. So the first launch gives you the time when it was completed, first crew to survive, and that's who it was that did it. Altitude record, that'll be when I did it, and that's the actual record. Although that seems a little bit low given some of the things that I've been doing recently. So pretty much can ignore most of that. You want to go ahead and edit them, that's fine, but it's really not going to do very much good, to be honest. Since most of them are just basically the records, you know, like medals and such. So pretty much going to ignore them. You've also got, again, going on the line of medals and records, when you reached the Mun, when you reached Minmus, when I reached Moho, Eve, so on and so forth, Duna, Ike, Lathe. Now if you haven't reached these, they won't be in your saved game. Now, I just so happen to have reached every single planet. Yes, I ended up using HyperEdit. I was only testing anyway. So, we're going to skip all of that, because there's not really that much benefit in changing anything, and it's pretty much self-explanatory for most people. So, you've got various parameters under the section of scenario. Most of it is basically KSP internal, so pretty much leave it alone, to be honest. In things like vessel recovery, when are you allowed to do vessel recoveries? You know, probably don't want to be changing that, and certainly don't want to be putting in random numbers. So pretty much go through, ignore most of this, and of course you can open up your own save game. If you are planning on making any changes to your save game, I highly recommend making a copy of it first, just in case you do type something in wrong, and well, it could do anything. So again, another scenario opening, discoverable objects, so on and so forth. Pretty much leave it alone. You're going to have bits in here for mods as well. In particular, this one is for ScanSat and its various settings. So let's go ahead and skip this entire lot. It's all specific to ScanSat and various scanners, etc. As you can see, I'm scrolling like a madman. So it's quite a huge saved game. I have just gone a little bit too far. Oh, that's ScanSat stuff again. There is the regolith stuff that we were playing with on Thursday last week. Flight states. Now this bit gets the interesting bit. This is all to do with your vessels, basically. Now again, it gives you the version. Not entirely sure what UT stands for, but active vessel. Probably always going to be 0, I think, whenever you save. because when you reload the vessel, you go to the KSC view, so you don't really have an active vessel. So setting that to a number, setting that to a number is probably going to be completely pointless, to be honest. So now it gives you vessel. Now, one of the things to remember here is the PID. That is basically the unique identifier for each and every vessel. It is going to be different. Typing in a single character differently can cause a huge number of problems. So be very, very careful. I would suggest leaving the IDs alone, unless you have reason to change them, i.e. if you're duplicating a craft for some reason. So in this case, name. Oh, well, now where have we seen those before? Ah, yes. This one's just so happens to be an asteroid that's floating around somewhere. Again, type, space, object. You will see types of vessel, etc. Sit, situation. In this case it's orbiting. Has it landed? False. Well, no, it's floating around in space at the moment. Where has it landed at? Well, it hasn't landed, so it's blank. Splashed. That's basically an indicator to say it's splashed down in the water somewhere. This entire lot here is basically to do with its position and direction of travel, speed of travel, etc. Unless you know this stuff, I would suggest not touching it at all. Otherwise you might find your vessel can be staring at the sun, or conversely miles off, halfway to the next galaxy. So pretty much ignore that lot and this lot, which also gives you its orbital information. Part. Now, where you see the parts, this is the literal parts that are attached to it and in what order. And explaining this bit gets very, very fun. In this particular case, Potatoroid, yes, they call them potatoes. They do look like potatoes though. CID, not sure which one that one is, but the unique ID, and I can't remember what the M is for. Anyway, basically its IDs are that number. Now don't confuse the PID with SID, UID or MIDs. They're all different. They might use the same number at times, but don't get them confused. It will not be fun. Launch ID. Well, as we were talking about right at the start of the saved game, each launch has a sequential number. So every time you launch a craft, either on the runway or from the pad, the launch ID will increment by 1. Each of your vessels will have its launch ID in there, unless for this particular example, because it's an asteroid, it was never launched, it was just procedurally generated, so its launch ID will be 0. Now for individual parts, you'll have basically the parent ID, what part, the ID of the part that this particular part connects to, right? And then you've got its position and rotation within the group of parts. All your vessels are basically made up from a group of parts, right? and that's what this configuration does. It says this particular part with its internal ID, right, goes at this particular position, right, which if it's the root part will probably be all zeros. Any part that then connects to that, either via the node or via surface attach, will have a position relative to the root part. So if you consider a vertical stack of tanks and the top one is the root part, the one that's underneath it will have the parent ID of the root part. The next one down from that will have the parent ID of the first part, and so on and so forth. Kinda gets complicated, especially when you're radially attaching. And of course the position is updated based on well, I'm pretty sure it's meters, but KSP loves to put things in without any units. Rotation, I'm guessing that's in degrees. In this case there's actually 4, which is helpful. And you've also got a mirror flag, which is basically to do with the part being mirrored, not in symmetry, but actually in its orientation. So going on, this group here is basically variables internal to KSP. Not got a clue what any of them actually do, or certainly not that I could explain. Pretty much leave them alone. Mass, of course, in this particular case, that would be the mass of the asteroid. Pretty much going to skip all of them. State, that's one of the states that it could be in. One is in flight. I think 0's landed, something like that. Connected and attached, that is basically, it's kind of, is the part connected to anything? Is it basically it's just connected and attached, literally as it says. It's a little bit difficult to sort of put into words. Flag, well, that's if you assign a flag to it. Yes, asteroids can have flags, but there's actually nowhere that's actually defined for it to display the flags. And these flags isn't the flags that Kerbal plant, it's the patch flags that go on parts. So, action groups, if you have them defined for specific craft, then that's where they are put. So you can go and manually edit your own action groups as you're going through the saved game. So for example, if you're launching a ship and then docking it to a space station, you can manually edit your action groups while the station's in orbit. Just bear with me a moment, I'll finish my coffee. Just read the chat. Yes, Shirty, it is very, very weird that it has 4 values for rotation. But this is squad we're talking about. Never actually have worked out what the 4th one is. I'm sure I'll find out at some point. Discovery, Because this is a asteroid, that's to do with the tracking center. So because it's an asteroid, pretty much leave it alone. Otherwise you'll confuse the living daylights out of the tracking center, then you'll end up with, well, either an asteroid that just instantly disappears, or an asteroid that you just can't get rid of. Flight plan control state will be completely blank for an asteroid, so we're going to come back to it. Vessel. Guess what? That's another asteroid. Let's go and skip that. It's boring. It's another one. And there's another one. There we go. Here's an active vessel. Again, there's your ID for the craft itself. This is the name that you give it. In this particular case, it's called Kerbin Scanner. I wonder what that's for. Type is station. You know, you select the icons for your ships. That's where it is. Situation. That's what SIT stands for. Orbiting. Because it is. It's in orbit around Kerbin. Is it landed? Well, I've just told you it's orbiting, so no, it hasn't landed. Has it splashed down? False. So on and so forth. As you can see, it's got various parameters to do with what it's actually orbiting, where, how fast, what directions it's in, so on and so forth. Now, coming right back to the parts and how the parts are organised. The root part in this case, which is always the first one, the one right at the top, in this case is the cupola. And it has the 3 part IDs, or parts IDs. So these give various information about how the part is, how it's orientated, what the position is in the entire group of parts. For the root node, it's always going to be position 0. As far as I'm aware, anyway. Rotation and mirror, we've already pretty much been through. Sim method. That is the symmetry method, which in this case is set to radial. Internal values to KSP, pretty much going to ignore them, and that's its current mass. Current temperature. EXPT, I know that one. If I remember it, I'll come back to it. Then state, this time is set to 0. Well, it's certainly not landed, so I'm not quite sure what that state is. Oh well. Connected and attached, both set to true, because it does have stuff connected to it and attached to it, and so on and so forth. Flag, pretty much the default flag, which you can of course change. RTRF. Well, that's the actual part name itself. The one that's unique to every single part that we set up as the first parameter within every single part config. Mod cost. Not sure what that's to do with. I think it's mainly to do with the costs within sort of career mode, which for sandbox is pretty much pointless. So if memory serves, that might also be the cost that you get back when you recover that part. Crew, that's who's on board. In this particular case, it's Jeb. Events, actions, part data. The only time when you'll see them is when you've got certain modules attached to parts. Other than that, they should pretty much be blank. Module. This is also related to modules. Config. I can see I'm going to have fun tonight. This is also related to the configuration of the modules that are in each part. So in this particular case, module command, because it's a command pod, is it enabled? Is the control status available? I.e., can you control it from there? In which case, yeah. Events. Well, you've got things that you can do when you right click on a part. It gives you a little menu of stuff that you can do. That's what's in here. So you've got the control from here buttons and what they do. Rename vessel is in there. Actions, pretty much ignore them. Next module, the reaction wheels, because the cupola has reaction wheels, and that's basically, are they turned on? What are they doing at the moment? On toggle, well, basically you can change the icons, you can change the name that it shows when you right click on stuff. That one doesn't make any sense. I'm sure that must be a new one that they've added in, or they've changed it. So those three, pretty much ignore them. You can really screw around with the user interface if you change them. Actions. This is basically, you can assign certain actions to the action groups. So you've got activate and deactivate, and then toggle, which is basically to that module. It's all still within this bracket here. So in the ship editor, whether it's the VAB or the SPH, when you go into edit your action groups and you click on a part and it gives you various actions that that part can do, right, when you assign them to an action group, that's what this bit is. That gets updated. Same goes for science experiment, which allows you to do various things. I'm sure you've seen all of these within the game menus, especially if you've been going through career. And again, action groups. So each module has its own internal configuration. Right. Set of actions which, as far as I'm aware, is pretty much always going to be blank. But then again, can't speak for every single module. And yep, basically, sorry, action. No, it's not actions. Oh dear, never mind. Delete that last bit. Actions is where it's assigned to an action group, which is not always filled in like that, even if it's set to none. As you see there, it's completely blank. So basically that prevents you from doing any of these actions via an action group. Now you can edit the saved game to provide those functions via action group, and then manually within the save game file assign it to an action group. However, it may be easier to edit the part configs to allow it. So again, next module. Certain parts have the module flag decal. That is your flag plastered on the side of the part. And this is also stored within the save game itself. So don't forget, there is no actions that can be assigned to an action group for the flag decal module rather. So again, graphical interface icon, toggle flag. Well, I'm sure in the VAB and the SPH you've seen the toggle flag entry on the right click menu, and that's where it's saved. Now on this particular save I've got tweak scale installed, so there's information about tweak scale itself. So basically what sort of size is it, its costs, what version it's come from, so on and so forth. Excuse me. I'm pretty sure you didn't want me to sneeze down the microphone. So, going all the way down, most of this, if you're familiar with editing part configs, most of this will be self-explanatory. So again, if you've got the trajectories mod installed, here is its config within your saved game. Trip logger, that should always be installed with command prompts. So the trip logger basically gives you the stats for each vessel that we saw right at the start of the save game. I believe it's also used when you're in career mode for the contracts as well. So when you have a contract for an altitude record, it goes off the trip logger. And of course what's in your saved game at the top. Also that's included with the parts is any resources that it contains. So if you run out of fuel in deep space, or you run out of power, you can go and do a search for name equals electric charge, or name equals monopropellant, and it will basically jump straight to that point. So you can then say, well, the maximum amount of the parts for the 10, but this one says 0 because I've ran out of it. Well, I'm just going to manually edit that to say 10. Yes, it's cheating. But conversely, you can also set it to 0 to make things really difficult for yourself. Now, these here are all to do with the monopropellant or the resource's own flow stack. If you've ever looked into how KSP manages where it gets resources from, what tank, etc., that those configs and their values, I should say, actually back onto the resource definitions. Do I already have it open? No, I don't. Helpful. But when you define the resource, let's see if I can go find it. Bear with me. Shove this over here. Nope, it's not defined in there. And this one, it's going to be under regolith resource configs. Nope. It's that one, I think. Nope. Where is it? Ah, it's under the master one. That's where I put it. That one. So if you go into game data, squad and resources, you'll have a resources generic config file. In here, this is where all of your resources are defined. Been through this many times. As you can see here, flow mode, transfer type, is it tweakable? Also correlates to those four there. Hide flow basically does it hide certain things from the user so that you can't actually see it. So when you hover over monopropellant, for example, in your resource tab at the top right of your screen, right, does it show you where the resource is in the part? Yes or no? So if you set that to true, it won't show you that little box telling you how much is in each individual part. I think most of the time that's actually set to false, so that it doesn't hide it. Now, as I've already explained, each craft is made up of parts that are, for want of a better way of putting it, bolted together. So the next part that is in here is the AR202, which some people might know that's to do with MechJeb. So again, what it's saying is the name of the part, its IDs, its launch ID, parent, which is 0, which is going to be the root part, and its position. As you can see here, it's a three-dimensional position relative to 0, 0, which is the root part. So the AR202 on the cupola, I always put right above where the door is. Right, so that's its position relative to the centre of the cupola. Right, and of course, you also get its rotation, which in this particular case, it was actually the default rotation that it already came with. And still no clue as to why there's 4 values there. There should only be 3. But still. Mirror is still the same, all 1s. Symmetry method, radial. Well, for most of these, it's going to be set to radial. Internal configs. Now you can pick up this one just by looking at it. SRFN, that basically tells you surface attach. Again, this comes down to the part configs. Is it allowed to surface attach to something? Right. You can only surface attach something if the part that you're trying to put it on allows surface attach, and the part that you're trying to put on also allows it to be surface attached to something else. In the saved game, that basically says, is this surface attached to it? And in this particular case, yes it is. Its mass is also given there. The E numbers are basically 1 to the power of minus 0.5. It's scientific number notation, and it gets really annoying in KSP. Temperature, that's its current temperature. Ignore those two. Connected and attached. Is it connected and attached to the rest of the ship? Answer, yes it is. That's the flag that should go on it, and that's its internal part name. Mod cost is set to 0. Not sure that's actually implemented thinking about it. I think, I know, talking back to 0.23, 0.22, something like that, they were on about using certain cost values, but not sure whether that's actually been implemented. So again, events, actions, and part data already been through. Modules, these are the information about the modules within that part. Been through it. So take a look at them through your own saved games. If you install mods, there's going to be different modules in there. So going through the configurations for each individual module would take us several weeks, so I'm not going to do it. So you can take a look at your own, and it's pretty much self-explanatory. There's nothing in here that's actually written in code. It's just a case of understanding what the data is. So skipping all the MechJeb stuff, eventually we'll get there. Next part, radial parachutes. Again, we've seen all this many times already so far. It's exactly the same config for each part within the vessel. It's all exactly the same. The only thing that varies is the actual data and stuff to do with each individual module. So let's go and find the next vessel. Simple way of doing that. The reason that I love Notepad++ is that you can go find all in current document, and then it picks up the name vessel, and I can just double click on it and it jumps straight to it. So in this particular case, there's a vessel there, there's one there, but that's not the one that we actually want. Vessel recovery stuff. Now what you can also do to make this a little bit easier is to do that. Just highlight, copy, and then search for it. So the first vessel we've already been through is an asteroid. There's several of them within this saved game. Go back up again. Find the Kerbin scanner. Asteroid. That's the Mun scanner. Mermis scanner. Moho. Eve. Duna. Oops. These are all, because this is in the advanced modding, advanced customizing for KSP, this is the stuff that we were actually doing for 9 hours on Thursday. So going through Ike scanner, lathe, Bop, Tylo, and so on. They're the names that I've given them. And of course, each one has its basically positions, what it's doing within the orbit, so on and so forth, and then a list of parts and the values for them. So if we do one of our favourite things that we do from time to time, we'll do a search for liquid fuel. Let's say a craft has accidentally ran out of liquid fuel and you just want to do a little bit of tweaking. There we go. This shows you each part. Tank content switcher. Well, that's because I've got procedural parts installed. But if you scroll all the way up, it'll tell you which ship that's actually in. Eventually. Oh, procedural battery. Well, either way, if you've just got one ship, it'll be a doddle. So if you needed to change a tank, for example, that has unexpectedly ran out of fuel and you don't want to use Alt F12 for infinite fuel, that's how you do it. Same goes for any other resource which includes electric charge. If your unmanned probe was launched and you accidentally forgot to put the solar panels out and you ran out of battery power, you can of course go into the saved game, edit it out so that you have power back in that battery, and then reload the saved game. So if you're using quick saves, you can hit F5 and quick save, load the quick save up in your text editor, search for the value, change it, save it, and then when you go back into KSP, you can press and hold F9 to reload the save game, and it'll reload your changes. And it saves having to get rid of what is basically a chunk of debris floating around in orbit. If you've done something a little bit stupid, that is. So again, everything that I show you can be used for correcting little accidents due to pilot error, or it can be used for a seriously high level of cheating. That's up to you. Moral of all three of these streams is that it's your KSP, your rules. Whatever you want to do, this is how you do it. So let's go and check chat. Nothing new in chat. If you've got any questions about what we're talking about, feel free to chuck them in chat. Shirty, while I think about it, do me a favour. I've got Nightbot rejoined into chat and I've turned its link filters off. Can you go ahead and post me a link to see if it chastises you still, please? Yep, Curly's just posted up in the chat that he's done this exact same technique when he accidentally ran out of fuel. Shirty wants to know, how do you add money to the career save? Not got a clue. It will be, if I scroll up, you have various configs to do with it. Let me have a look, see if I can identify it. No. most of the time you can actually spot them. Nope, 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 nope. It also probably doesn't help that the save file that I'm actually looking at is sandbox rather than career, but let's see. That's also worth pointing out while I'm here. Within the scenario, if you destroy a building, you can change it from intact false to intact true within your saved game. And likewise, if you want a building destroyed, instead of slamming something into it, you can just change it in the saved game. So let's have a look here. It'll be in here somewhere. But because this is a massive saved game, you know what, there might actually be a more simple way of doing this. Let's get rid of that, get rid of that. What have I got open? I should be good to do this. Seriously. Yes, run. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into KSP Intermediate and I'm going to create a career mode save. So, first time I've ever done one, so let's take a look. Well, certainly not recently. I think it's 0.2... I think it's 2.3.5 when career mode actually started getting interesting. That I actually did go through some of the career mode stuff. So I might as well show you the screen while KSP is starting up. All we want to do is create the saved game file so that we can take a look at it. Greetings, Ghost Rider. How's it going? Oh darn it, it's still deleting links. Yeah, I'm really got to be careful which saves you're actually working in. So, start new. We're going to go career. I'm going to call it career 1. Start. Just going to let it load up and create everything. Right, that should be good enough. Yes, I've got it. And then we're going to come out, quit to main menu so it makes sure it saves the saved game. And then we're going to come out of KSP. So in here we need to switch to the right saved game. Here's that one. And we're going to saved again, and there's career 1 that we've just created. And there's the persistent file. So open it up with a text editor, and here it is. Can anyone remember what the default amount of money is? Because I forgot to look. It'd be easier to search for that amount of money, for that value. Yeah, I didn't see the link, Shirty. Ghost Rider, can you see the link that Shirty's posted above? Because it just says deleted link at my end. I think it's deleted link for everyone else as well. I think something screwy has gone on with my Twitch settings. Can you still see it though, Ghost Rider? And he still sees it. That's really, really weird. It's just me. Great. I'll have to see if I can get hold of Skit later on and see if she knows what weird stuff's going on. Very, very weird. Okay, anyone know the default amount of money that's that you get when you first start career? It's going to be easier to search for that value rather than try to search for something that resembles money in the configs. Anyone know, or am I going to have to go back into the saved game? Well, I'm hanging on for Shirty. 30,000. I thought it was around about 25,000, but... So while I'm waiting for Shirty, just to let everyone know, all 3 live streams for next week are cancelled. This is due to basically upgrades to my PC that are going to require a reinstall completely from scratch and a complete retuning and all the rest of it. That is performance tuning, because my processor and RAM and whatnot and my graphics card are all quite majorly overclocked. Yes, it's liquid cooled, so I can actually get away with it. So just letting everyone know in advance. 25k, right, let's go and search for it. So we've got the persistent file open. Now I don't think any of the values within here have commas in them to represent thousands, so it should be 25, 1, 2, 3. So we go find all in current document, and there we have it. Under scenario, name, funding, that's where it is. How's that for finding something live on stream? Now your science should also, there we go. If you wanted to edit your science, there it is. Your tech levels will also be here. Right, your reputation is there. When you have strategies in place, they go in there. That's all the destructible buildings. Where is it? Where is it? Somewhere there'll be the... Yeah, here it is. I couldn't see the wood for the trees then. Your contract system, your active contracts are in here. So, yes, you can go and edit them to give you ludicrous amounts of whatever. Or, if you have a contract that you no longer want, you can, of course, just delete that section. Now, the contracts themselves are actually built into the game, so you can't actually change too many parameters within the contract. Excuse me. But it looks like you can change the prestige that it gives you. Not quite sure what all of these values actually do. But you can see here it says alt equals 5,000. Well, I know just from seeing other people play career mode that is the altitude record contract, and that is the altitude you have to beat. So of course you can, if you get a contract that is stuck, certain values about the contract are saved within your saved game. So if it's stuck and won't clear no matter what you do, you can go and manually edit the saved game so that basically it is something that you can then clear. So just in case something does get stuck. Or of course you can always cheat and set the altitude record as say 100 meters. I believe somewhere in here would be the reward as well. Can't immediately see a specific entry in here. It may be one of these in here, in which case I've got no clue as to which one it is. Those values are basically to the type of contract. So could it be that one? Your guess is as good as mine. But the prestige gained is there for each one. So when you're in career mode, there's a lot of things that you can change about the game from your own saved game that doesn't actually involve chucking parts in or changing the main configs. So again, I just show you what these configs are and what they do. It's up to you to change them to something sensible or not. Yep, no worries, Shirty. Greetings, my Silas. How are you doing tonight? This afternoon, this morning, whatever time of day it is for you. So this pretty much covers all of the stuff to do with saved games. Now you can't, as I've already explained, can't go through every single minor detail because some of it is to do with KSP's internal itself, and basically there is no documentation on it, and probably only the developers themselves know what stuff does. I'm sure some of the modders do as well, some of the more advanced ones. But last time I did a search for the documentation on the saved games and their config values, there wasn't any that were out. So it would probably have to be a direct question to support to find out what the configs do. Not only that, some of these values also are mod specific. as I've already mentioned. So if you install a mod, they're going to have config values for that mod. So again, you'd have to request that information from the mod creator. So all the planet data for Scansat and Regolith, that's all specific to them and not Squad. It's evening where you are. Wonderful. Well, it's evening here as well. Coming up to 9 o'clock to be exact. Contract configuration today. No, we're actually going through the saved game and pretty much finished going through all the options and configuration values within the saved game itself. Which includes how to drastically cheat. But what can we say? Changing anything within KSP always allows you to drastically cheat if you really want to. So, is there any specific questions on the saved game file, its format, etc, etc? I'll just chuck that one open to chat. And I'm actually surprised that we got through the saved game itself so quickly within half an hour. I thought it was going to take a heck of a lot longer than that. Or how to fix massive mistakes. Yep. It also includes one thing that you can do, being careful of course, is to duplicate ships that are already flying. But that can get very, very tricky to do indeed. Because you need to change all of those IDs that I showed. They all need to be unique. If they are not unique, well, you will end up with basically two ships inside each other. You can end up with a Franken ship that's got like parts of it and parts of something else bolted on together. Most of the time it'd just explode, to be honest, but what can I say, KSP reacts differently. But having said that, back in 2.3.5, which I hope has now been fixed for 0.9, there was a bug that would allow ship duplication. I can't remember the specifics for it, but one of the fixes that was commonly done is to go into the saved game file, and they found that the two ships had the same IDs, so it was linking the two together, but the master IDs were different, so it thought there was two actual ships. So just deleting one set of the ship starting from its master ID solved the problem. Well, it solved the result of the bug, let's put it that way. Yeah, I've been watching like First Ghost Live and some of the others go through the career mode, and yeah, it looks quite. They've made it a hell of a lot more difficult than it was in 2.3.5. Yep, duplicating cables. Also, you can, if you've ever had dead cables, you know, the cables with ragdolls, you can fix them through the saved game, but it is really freaking difficult to do it at times. I think it's mainly when they get thrown out of the command seat that they do it. I think there's other times as well. I fixed it for 0.90. But basically, if you do a search for the Kerbal's name, then you'll actually see all the data for him. If you then take a second Kerbal, let's say for example this happened on the Mun, and you stood it right by the Ragdoll Kerbal, if you then do a quick save, look in the quick save, do a search for the two of them, you can then compare the two sets of values. Now the coordinates for them is going to be slightly different, but you will have other states to do with controllability, etc., that should be the same that aren't. So it will, if you put the two configs for the two Kerbals side by side, they will jump out a mile. But again, that's going into advanced stuff, and you've got to look into it, because each, from what I've seen myself, each time a Kerbal goes into Ragdoll and doesn't come out, the actual fault with the saved game is not the same. So you've got to compare a live Kerbal with a Ragdoll Kerbal. Now, Kerbal duplication is also fun, which can also lead to some interesting black screens. Now, one thing that I should point out here is that your saved games also save information about planets. Now, a certain person really likes to break the Kerbalverse and make planets disappear. Not naming any names at all. Not gonna go there. I would really love to see the saved game for when all the planets have disappeared, because I'd be willing to bet that that status info is actually saved within the saved games themselves. I would really like to see that one. Not tried that one actually. Smacking cables with a rocket. Well, I mean, the ragdoll. One of the ragdolls. I should say, one of the ragdoll bugs was basically that when a Kerbal got thrown out the seat, there wasn't any code within KSP to recognise that he wasn't in the seat anymore. So basically there was no sort of control ability defined for the basically the Kerbal part. So going into the save game and saying is controllable yes actually fixed the problem. However, there are a few others. There was one where if you EVA'd too close to the part being destroyed, i.e. slamming into the ground, that would also ragdoll your Kerbal, because it hadn't finished transferring the Kerbal out of the part, so it was in a limbo state basically. Which is why sometimes, don't know if it still does it in 0.9, but sometimes when you EVA a Kerbal, the Kerbal would jump off the ladder and start floating away. Because it's that sort of split-second difference between transferring it from inside the part to basically the Kerbal becoming its own part and ship within the configs. Basically it'd just bounce off the collision meshes and it'd float away off to wherever. Most of the time that it happened to me, it just went splat into the ground. Yes, more fun to hit them with a rocket. Heck yes. This bug still exists. Great. Yeah, that's not the only one that I found that still exists in 0.9. There is also the docking bug that still exists in 0.9. I'm not talking about the one where you can close two docking ports together at half a meter a second and they nuke themselves. I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about the radial docking ports. Trying to dock one radial docking port with another radial docking port. It still tries to align with the command pod. I'm talking about that bug. That bug's annoying. Especially when you then have to, well, basically manually and visually align it. So, any more questions regarding the saved game file? Anything at all, just chuck it up. While I'm waiting for chat, just to point out, I have exported all of my videos onto my YouTube channel, which was really fun to edit them all last night and sort them all out and put them into playlists, etc. So feel free to take a look at past streams on my YouTube channel. Pretty much all of my streams will get saved, which, because I'm not in turbo mode, lasts for about 14 days, I think it is. And immediately after the stream, I export them across to YouTube. But also be aware, my YouTube channel is used for multiple other things at the same time. Like Minecraft and whatnot. And any other game that I decide to play, or a video that I decide that could do with uploading and keeping a hold of. So on and so forth. Mycellus never had any docking bugs. Yeah. If you've seen some of the really massive stations that I've built, even a small docking bug can be quite disastrous, and usually results in a crashed KSP when things start massively exploding and parts going everywhere. I find that the KSP engine just can't delete debris fast enough. And of course, if you're like me and run with max debris, or basically unlimited debris, that can very quickly cause a few issues with other ships in orbit around Kerbin. And even though a lot of people say the likelihood of a piece of debris hitting another ship, or you flying into a piece of debris, is very small, yeah, I've done it a couple of times. Especially when ships explode in orbit. Best one is the 10,000 ton rocket that I did, the first couple of times I set up a maneuver node to go to dual and fired up the engines at pretty much full power, and the entire thing sort of concertinaed into two, collided with itself and just exploded into about 200 pieces. Just for fun, I then time accelerated, and well, Kerbin then had its own sort of rings after that. Yeah, the more ships and parts in general that you have within your saved game, it basically makes KSP use more memory, and it does slow it down. However, the ships that are outside of the 2.4 kilometer range are, well, use the term that everyone uses, on rails. So basically, physics isn't calculated, and most modules that are running aren't calculated until you switch your focus to that ship. So the ship itself isn't treated as a bunch of parts, it's just treated as a tag, a name tag basically. So in that regard, yes, it takes up memory because you've got the save game loaded, and yes, it slows down the game because the game has to make the rails for it, and then it follows the rails, if that makes any sense. I mean, the biggest hog of memory and CPU time that I basically know is basically the active ship, the active vessel. So the more parts that you have on a vessel, the bigger the parts, the higher the resolution of textures within that 2.4 kilometer boundary. Bear in mind it's not just one ship as well. That can severely kill your KSP. So when you're talking about huge stations, it's a very good idea that if your station is made up of modules, to actually use something like UBO welder to weld those parts together. So even though it is still loading those modules and textures, the actual physics engine treats all the parts as one, so it doesn't calculate physics for each individual part. So that type of thing can speed KSP up a little bit. But again, don't forget, excuse me, don't forget you are still loading individual modules and individual sets of textures. So you will still chew up a bucket load of RAM. Now, one of the better things to do is basically to reduce the total number of parts used on any one given craft. Kind of obvious, been teaching that all along. So with certain things, like for example a space station, adding, say, I think it was in put my teeth back in. It was in Lackluster Labs that have these radial pipes on the side. Well, those radial pipes, not only are you calculating physics for them, but you've also got the model itself, the textures. So do you really need them? Or can you retexture a part to make it look like it's got pipes on it? Because don't forget, the texture's already loaded. If you retexture it, then you've still just got the one texture. Sometimes the answer is, of course, no. Is there a way to extend physics range? Not that I have found. It seems to be hard-coded within the game. Even if you look within the game's own settings file, in here, right, there is no value within here for the physics range. Now that's interesting. Settings file version hasn't been updated within this. Whoops. Oh well. I assume people know about the Conics patch. If not, it's on the KSP forums. It's to do with the your orbit and the way it's displayed within the solar view. Let's have a look here. Doesn't look like it. All your key controls. Throttle axes. Interesting. All the terrain drawing stuff for each individual planet. Nope, it's not within the main settings ini file, so yeah, it's hard coded within KSP itself. However, that being said, it may be possible to change it with a mod. So it might be worth posing the question to into the modding forum, put up a request for a mod that allows you to change the physics boundary. But of course, be aware that changing this may completely cripple KSP, and you've got multiple objects docking and stuff like that. Oh, you mean the load distance? Yeah, the physics distance and the load distance are two different distances. The 2.2, or as I call it, the 2.4, that's the load distance, and the actual physics simulation distance, I think, is around about 200 meters, something like that. So if another ship is within 200 meters of the ship that you're actually piloting, it will calculate the physics on the other ship as well. So if you were flying in formation, for example, and we're not talking about multiplayer here, it would calculate physics for the other ship or part. So when you stage a rocket, until the tank and boosters get more than 200 meters away from your rocket, the physics is still being calculated for them as they are separating away from you. one of the things that I would actually like to see for that loading distance, basically if you've got something big that then enters loading distance, you can basically KSP will just halt while it's being loaded, and that's kind of annoying, especially if it's something big. There's no reason really why KSP can't load that gradually in the background. I mean, say from 3 kilometers, KSP can recognize that you're approaching this object and start loading it in very slowly, so that by the time it gets to 2.4 kilometers, it's fully loaded in. That way it doesn't just immediately stop the game dead while it does it. I don't know why really that they can't do that. I mean, something like that just to me makes common sense. Yep, I mean, if you... I was actually watching a video earlier on this afternoon by Scott Manley. Unfortunately, I haven't got it up on screen at the moment because I have to come out of Firefox whenever I do these live streams. But basically, it was his last 2 videos, and he was... I think it's the second to last one. He was looking at using Fire Spitter and explaining the doodle bug and whatnot, and he was launching a drone basically off down the runway and a second ship following it behind so he can shoot at the first one. He does explain a few times in that what happens when you go outside the physics distance with drones and whatnot. So I think the distance is around about 200 meters, 250 meters, something pretty much like that. Ow, that would be my elbow. Anything else that people want to know on the saved game settings? I mean, if not, I want to pick up on what me and Shirty were working on Thursday evening for 9 hours. Something that we were getting a little bit stuck with doing. Yep. Well, basically, yes. Even the destructible KSP dropping parts and whatnot onto it, you have the 2 sets of distances. Now obviously if you are launching a rocket, then in order for physics to be calculated, which includes the engine throttle, your plane, the one that you are piloting, has to be within about 200 meters of the rocket. But the rocket itself also has to be within 2.4 kilometers of the player. Otherwise, basically, KSP, well, first of all, you run the risk of it being deleted as debris, even if it's got a probe core attached to it. But also, unless Squad have actually changed it, then it probably won't destroy a building if it goes outside of 2.4 kilometers. So, for example, I can't remember who it was on YouTube, but somebody deorbited a load of asteroids with the trajectories mod that were bound straight for KSP, and his space plane that he used, he detached from them, and he was like 5 kilometers above KSP when this great big E-class asteroid came down, and it literally just bounced off the buildings and didn't destroy them. So outside of the 2.4 kilometer range, even asteroids probably won't destroy the KSP, because they're not actually loaded properly as a mass object. They're just loaded as a tag. Yes, bouncing asteroids, always good fun. Me and Heretic were having a conversation June last year, because he set the Jeb's Balls challenge on the forum. Basically, there were 3 asteroids that were placed in and around KSP, and the objective was, without using modded parts, to get them back to the KSP. And apparently not very many people actually entered that competition. But I actually grabbed this asteroid. I think it was a B class off the top of my head. And I was, well, first of all I tried dragging it across the ground, and that really wasn't that helpful. And then I decided, well, actually, hang on, I've got enough trussing on here, I should float. So I literally dragged it into the water, and didn't have a lot of intakes at the time. Or at least I didn't have enough for the weight of the asteroid. So I ended up basically using my jets and making this asteroid float, and literally dragging it at like 6 meters per second back to the KSP. Yeah, that was boring. Also attempted to do a vertical lift on one and just couldn't get the arm to dock in a straight line. And then I found a loading bug within KSP, which several people have been reporting over at least 6 months, where when you enter the physics distance, the objects will just suddenly jump up in the air and come back down again. Well, I discovered that, and with asteroids it was decisively destructive. As in, the asteroid and the attached ship to it would jump up in the air, and, well, the asteroid had a general tendency to rotate so that it was on top of the ships, and when it came back down, well, the ship was between the asteroid and Kerbin, with obvious results. Which really did get quite annoying. I never got around that bug. So, yeah, that kind of ended my attempt at doing the challenge. Well, yeah, Class E's are always great fun. These 3 asteroids that are in question were already landed and on the ground. You had to build something to go and pick them up and take them back to the KSC. And it's not as easy as it sounds. But if you really, really want a challenge, Mycillus, and that is to see what happens when you dump a Class E asteroid into Joule. First of all, getting it there is... Yes, I've done it. It took me pretty much all weekend, but yeah, I managed to do it. So, I think we're going to call it there for the saved game configs. Not with stock parts. Well, yeah. You can do pretty much anything with modded parts. Right, so let's take a look at basically what me and Shirty were working on Thursday evening. Now I've changed a few settings in the Space Plasma config file. Just to recap for those that weren't here on Thursday, this is to do with the advanced modding for KSP. Specifically, we are configuring Regolith to provide resources on planets and in atmospheres and in lakes and floating around in space. Now, until I actually load up the advanced KSP, which we'll be doing in a moment, it's not going to make any sense. So just bear with me. So what I've done here is I've set the ranges far apart, and what I've been looking at is that basically, as per... Actually, I'll go and find it. Where did I put it? Here we go. This is the only copy of the Regolith API documentation that I've ever found. And basically it's not exactly what I would call explanatory. So this section here is what we're looking at for the interplanetary stuff. So you've got the abundance, which it says is 1 to 100. Variance is how spiky it is. Now, the explanation here is really not helpful. Used in combination with simplex noise. Wonderful. What's the algorithm for the simplex noise? Otherwise, that value is completely useless. Would they not have done something a little bit more logical? But anyway, basically, higher the number there, the more the values change, the bigger the gradient is, basically, and the more splodgy you get on the map. So now we're looking at altitudes and ranges. So for atmospheric and interplanetary, well, it's the interplanetary that we're having trouble with configuring. The range where the resource is present in peak abundance, expressed as a multiplier of the body's radius. Right, first question. Does anyone know the radius of Kerbal? That's the sun. And I can't load Firefox at the moment because it has a general tendency to futz with OBS. So if someone could tell me what the radius is of Kerbin's sun, that would be wonderful.